The final shape in the eyes of the players was a success. It was fun, it was interesting, it was slightly innovative. The story was worse than Endgame, let's be completely real, but overall, it was absolutely what you would call a success. But my question since this whole debacle began was always, is the success of the final shape actually enough to save Bungie? And, well, soon we're gonna know the answer.
All right, guys, let's actually read this. This is from Steven Totila. I'm saying that correctly. Bungie's deep job cuts were in the works prior to Destiny's most recent release, sources says. The acclaimed studio has been shredding jobs since Sony bought it. Employee hour is focused on Bungie leaders more than the bosses at PlayStation. A second round of deep job cuts at Destiny Studio Bungie's in less than a year sent shockwaves through the games industry on Wednesday. The cuts were not a sudden move. A sizable new round of layoffs had been planned by Bungie management for months before the launch of the studio's acclaimed Destiny 2 expansion, The Final Shape, this past June. Two former Bungie employees told GameFile. Hold on.
This just shows how absolutely desperate Bungie was with the final shape. That they already considered the job cuts if the final shape does not succeed to the level that it needs to. And again, it's really hard for this final shape to succeed in sales and whatnot numbers, because you need to understand, when a game has 2 or 3 bad expansions in a row, or not even that bad in this case, but let's just say generic for argument's sake, right? It's really hard to get people back, all the people who left. Some will obviously return if there is a big new expansion and it is actually good and people are saying that, but all the people will not return. All the people definitely will not return. And, well, this is the problem. One good expansion is not going to get all of those people back, which Bungie most likely needed.
Hold on. All right, hold on. What if the final shape would have like blew every metric out of the water and been, I don't know. But let's say something crazy. Let's say 1 million concurrent players on Steam alone. Then what? Now, the layoffs were announced publicly yesterday by Bungie CEO Pete Parsons, who said 220 workers would.
Then the layoffs would probably honestly still happen, but they would be drastically reduced.
Lose their jobs out of a workforce of about 1,300. Bungie is also working with a parent company, Sony, to integrate 155 of our roles into its PlayStation group. Sony Interactive Entertainment, Parsons said. Bungie will also spin out one of our incubation.
Wait. This implies that Sony already owns Bungie, but that's not finalized, right? Bungie still has the chance to actually make enough money for Sony to not actually own them, because that is their deal, right?
Project is an action game set in a brand new science fantasy universe to form a new studio within PlayStation Studios to continue his promising development, he said. Sony purchased Bungie in 2022 for $3.6 billion, at least partially due to its development and management of Destiny 2, the sci-fi first-person shooter that launched in 2017 and had entrenched itself as a beloved free-to-play, massively multiplayer, continuously updated live service adventure. But Bungie's leaders had overstated their studio's financial prospects to Sony, and Wednesday's cuts were needed to stop continued losses that amounted to an ongoing reality check, 3 ex-Bungie sources told GameFile. I think Sony overpaid for Bungie, one of the former insiders said.
Okay, so this is effectively a summarization of the situation. Bungie, I don't know if technically this counts as Sony bought them, but Sony put capital in them. And the promise was like this. Bungie needs to return a pretty sizable amount of profits per quarter, per year, or whatever the thing was. And if they don't do that, then Sony gets to step in and take control of effectively everything. Sony is in the game, but Sony doesn't own Bungie. But if Bungie actually fails to meet some certain budgetary quotas, then Sony gets to go in, replace all the people they like, and effectively fully actually own Bungie. That should be roughly the deal in layman's terms.
On condition of anonymity to avoid damaging their career. I think Bungie sold things they were just not able to deliver. Two of the ex-Bungie workers said the studio repeatedly missed financial targets promised to Sony and had been losing money since the release of February 2023's Destiny 2's expansion Lightfall. Since February? It was what? Lightfall struggles along with the decay of the aging Destiny 2 player base and repeated delays to the company's next big game marathon led managers to do a dire conclusion last year. Bungie, the studio initially granted continued autonomy when it was purchased, would need to make deep cuts to show Sony executives that it was taking its finances seriously, the two sources said. Oh, God.
Okay, yeah, you see, this is what I explained. Sony has a deal with them where, you know, Bungie is almost kind of free to do what they please, but they need to deliver on certain quotas. And if not, well, Sony gets to do whatever the hell they please. And Bungie's obviously trying to avoid that.
God. Last October, Bungie laid off around 100 workers, but employees sensed that might not be the end. In March, IGN reported that Bungie developers fear more cuts would follow the June 2024 release on Destiny 2 expansion, The Final Shape. That was the rumor. The rumor was Final Shape was going to come out and there were going to be cuts. I assumed that Final Shape did well, there wouldn't be cuts. And those cuts in 2023 were indeed understood internally to be...
From everything that we know previously, the thing about The Final Shape is it can't perform good. It needs to perform spectacularly. And, well, again, that's the problem.
Insufficient. Two of the ex-Bungie sources told GameFile, at least by early 2024. As a result, Bungie's leadership planned another round. Those cuts couldn't be avoided even if for Destiny 2's 2024 expansion, The Final Shape had a blockbuster performance, three sources said. Let me read.
Yeah, and a big thing is here also, people have speculated the numbers for The Final Shape pre-purchase, or what's it called, the stupid thing that we do as gamers and always regret it because the games are always half-cooked. Pre-order, there we go. People speculated from the pre-orders that, and this source was actually a source that was pretty on the money always when they did speculations like this, because they did the speculation based on in-game things that you get for pre-purchasing at every level. So those numbers should be pretty accurate. And yeah, those pre-purchases were really, really bad. Those pre-purchases were really, really bad. And they started early enough that Bungie probably saw the writing on the wall and they understood that they need to lay off people. There was probably no way around it because the pre-purchasing was so absolutely below expectation. And even if that source, which was right almost every time that they made a prediction based on numbers, even if that source was 50% off the mark in Bungie's favor, that would still not be enough, and layoffs would most likely still need to be pretty drastic.
Read that one more time. Those cuts could not be avoided even if for Destiny 2's 2024 expansion, The Final Shape had a blockbuster performance, three sources said. That's what we were wondering earlier. What we were wondering is if the Final Shape had just blown it out of the water, could they have avoided it? Jesus, man. I don't understand how...
This seems like a lie, by the way. This is not how these big companies operate. If things go up, they would not cut people. Unless these people are literally mouth breather knuckle draggers, then there's no need to actually fire them. These people need to be the absolute worst of the worst to get fired if The Final Shape performs spectacularly. So this is I don't trust this source. This doesn't seem to go in line with reality, how things should happen in almost all instances.
You can avoid that. All right, reads for comments about detailed reporting in the story. A Bungie rep referred GameFile to Sony Public Relations. Sony PR did not reply to a subsequent inquiry. Now, I at Bungie's leaders. On Tuesday, current and former Bungie workers led into Parsons and Bungie management, questioning the leadership that had steered the studio into successive traumatic layoff cycles. Step down, Pete, former Destiny community manager Liana Rupert wrote on Twitter X. Inexcusable. Bungie community manager Dylan Gaffner wrote on Twitter X, who by the way still works at Bungie. Industry-leading talent being lost yet again, accountability falling upon the workers who have pushed the needle to deliver for our community time and time again. Now, Gaffner's social media feed is full of laid-off workers from Bungie's player support, narrative, sound teams, and more, reeling from the shock and looking for work. On Tuesday, Parsons himself described a studio that was overextended by chasing the goal
Well, the narrative is again pretty generic, so I don't know what you want from them.
Of running 3 concurrent major franchises and greenlighting an array of incubation projects over the last 5 years. Dude, I mean, look, man, I remember seeing it, all the hiring spree that Bungie was doing, and what was so crazy was so many hirings were occurring that had nothing to do with Destiny. And then we saw this project and that, you know what I mean? It was like, good God. And there's no way they could have pushed all those out. I don't know what they were thinking. And by 2023, an economic slowdown made the situation worse, Parsons said. We were overly ambitious, our financial safety margins were subsequently exceeded, and we began running in the red, he said. Even with the exhaustive efforts undertaken across our leadership and product teams to resolve our financial challenges, these steps were simply not enough.
Dude, you know what's absolutely crazy about this? It's one thing that a publicly traded company can't lower their budget, lower their expectations after the disease of unknown origin happens. But the fact that Bungie, which is effectively a privately owned company, well, it's not effectively, it just is. A privately held company cannot lower their expectations and account for the miraculous fact that people are gonna go outside and play less computer games is absolutely mind-boggling.
Critique of how Bungie management spent the studio's money popped up unexpectedly last year via a trial exhibit from a lawsuit over Microsoft's bid for Activision. An internal 2021 Xbox document analyzed potential acquisition targets, including Bungie, which Microsoft had owned from 2000 to 2007. One of the listed risks, company is known for its high burn rate. I remember us reading.
The greatest thing Destiny ever achieved was convince people it was Microsoft's fault that it was bad.
That was they got a high burn rate, but like somehow they haven't gone under. Now Sony weighs in. Tension between Bungie and parent Sony did not take long to come into view. In February, less than 2 years since Sony had announced its plan to buy Bungie, the company's longtime chief financial officer Hiroki Totiki said Bungie had room for improvement from a business perspective with regard to areas such as the use of business expenses and assuming accountability for development timelines. Seeing that, yeah, accountability.
Yeah, well, I don't know about the fact that, they hired everyone and blah, blah, blah. I don't know about that, honestly, anything. But this does seem to corroborate if he says this. Because, okay, there's literally only one part of every business that actually works, and it's finance, boys. That's why we're the OGs. That's why we're the best. That's why we're the most valuable, okay? Hey, get mad, coders and losers. Go work at a company that does coding and still get bullied by the good old same old finance department. That's your life forever, boy.
For development timelines. So again, in their eyes, Final Shape probably should not have been pushed back to June, and Marathon should have been coming out this year, on top of whatever other games they were working on. Notably, an initial live translation of Totiki's answer didn't name Bungie as...
If they need money so Sony doesn't actually step in and do what Sony wants, then yeah, Marathon should have come out this year. That is true.
Seemingly referred to PlayStation's portfolio of studios, but Sony made a point to clarify. Later, Totaki was indeed talking about the studio. Wow. Also notable, Totaki had recently added chairman of PlayStation to his duties. That's wild.
By the way, this thing is the greatest story of a game that absolutely has had limitless potential and completely squandered everything into dust. It is crazy how absolutely incompetent, inept Bungie just is as a company. It's insane. Again, you don't have to look further than the fact that there's no other competitor to Destiny on the market. There exists none. There is literally nothing. People say Warframe, but if you play Destiny, then there's roughly 20% chance that you're gonna like Warframe because it doesn't offer you the same things and it's different. And those are almost completely different games. I mean, Warframe's probably the thing that that is the closest to Destiny, but even then, the conversion rate is not actually that good at all. But man, the fact that Destiny is in such a unique position and it does absolutely everything in its power to try and make people hate it, to try and make people not play it is insane. The new player experience for Destiny 2 has been literally atrocious for the past how many years has it been? There's pop-ups of things that you can't do. There's no explanation what's important. There's no explanation how to use this, how to use that. The storyline can get bugged. Literally, if a new player goes and plays Destiny, if someone's not holding their hand in the tutorial section, they're probably gonna quit because the game's just that poorly optimized for new players. It's insanity. Okay? How is Disney supposed to acquire new players if their new player experience is literally tearing its head out and screaming, "Please delete me, we hate you"?
So in the initial live translation, his answer didn't clarify Bungie, but just to follow up, he made it clear that he was in fact talking about Bungie. In May, Sony investors questioned Totaki about when the company would reach break even on Bungie. The company is not really expecting any profit contribution from it this year, Totaki said. PlayStation profits are nevertheless top of mind at Sony these days. The headcount of its gaming group swelled in recent years as it went on an acquisition binge, but gaming profit had waned into a recent sign of recovery, as GameFile noted in February. Sony said it had 12,700 workers in its game and network services division, inclusive of PlayStation, as at the end of March 2023, the most recent figure available. That was up from 10,200 at the end of March 2022.
Jesus.
The overall headcount for all of Sony had been declining every year since 2009, aside from the bump in 2017. It finally grew again in 2022 and 2023. When it did, more than half of the
And those people need to be fired. That's hilarious.
added workers were in its gaming division. But Sony's game group has been reporting slimmer profits even as it takes in more money. A chart from Sony's 2023 corporate report shows the games division's revenue soaring, but Sony's music division started to make bigger profits. In this past spring, Sony elevated 2 PlayStation veterans to co-CEO roles under Totaki. In a note marking their new positions, the co-CEOs wrote, "Expectations for us are high, and we aim to drive improving profitability." That's the name of the game right now, then. Now, the alternate history is worse. Publicly
Hey, it always is.
among 4
Line must go up.
Bungie sources GameFile spoke with, there was little animosity for Sony over the cuts, the blame falling to Bungie management for promising unrealistic growth. Destiny is a live service game. It makes money when players who sample it for free decide to spend money on optional cosmetic items for their character.
This is not even correct. To play Destiny 2, yeah, sure, it's free, but then you need to spend, what, 200 buckaroos on expansions? On content that no longer makes sense because it's removed partially from the game? Sunset? No.
And for new adventures offered via expansions such as Lightfall and the Final Shape. It is interesting here too, man, because I would say...
By the way, that absolute last Hail Mary is pretty much, hey, we are Destiny 2, we're absolutely free to play. The only thing that you need to buy is that last expansion to get every piece of content, and then actually find a decent way to implement microtransactions. You know what's absolutely mind-boggling? I absolutely do not believe that the majority of Destiny's money is actually coming in from the sales of expansions, DLCs. Let me actually check Steam real quick. I want to see if I can see the Destiny DLCs. Destiny 2, let's go. So, let's see. Oh, there's a trailer. No one cares. Okay. So, Bros all 12 DLC. All 12 DLCs. No, it's actually 410 euros. This is insane. There is no way they are making people actually spend 410 euros on the goddamn bundle. Destiny 2 Legacy Collection. This can be just a microtransaction inside of the game. The final shape, select purchase option. Annual pass $100. Jesus. I don't believe they make so much money from this. I think it's probably still microtransactions that make the money. They have the opportunity to just go free to play and you just buy the last, $40-$50 expansion and then you add microtransactions, but they're not doing it, which is crazy. Dude, whenever I see a game and I'm looking at it, oh, it's free, but to actually play it, if I like it, I need to spend 400 euros? Yeah, it's a pass for me, dude. It's a pass for me. I'd rather buy 10 different AAA games and then just see what I like and maybe not play 8 of them. That's better money spent at this point.
Years ago, that animosity was toward Activision. Anytime when something negative popped up, the company would rally in a way. And you saw it happen after Forsaken. They rallied and pretty much put the middle finger up to Activision. But here, they're not getting.
Again, the greatest lie that Destiny has ever told is the fact that their game was bad because of Activision. That's such a lie and cope.
That they're blaming Bungie. What did Activision say about Forsaken? I'm pretty sure they just said it was disappointing. Big game publishers and studios hope that a live service game with a dedicated user base will provide regular revenue for years. The pitfall is that players' enthusiasm to play any live service can wane, a problem exacerbated when players move on to other newer and or more popular games. Destiny 2 has become one of those and was slipping. Bungie's next game Marathon.
Yeah. This is something I talked about. When live service games first came out, they were a gold mine because it wasn't that advanced. You had one expansion and 0 patches in a year. This was when the live service games started, and people were happy because there wasn't competition. Nowadays, if you want a live service game, you pretty much need to insert some kind of big patch, big change every single month, and it's no longer that free gold mine.
Marathon like Destiny is also designed to be a live service game. Sony touted its Bungie acquisition as a means to gain profitable live service gaming expertise. It planned for Bungie to spread its knowledge to other PlayStation teams while running as a quasi-independent shop. Multiple Sony executives sit on Bungie's board. Well, look at there. Multiple Sony executives sit on Bungie's board, as reported by IGN in December. But Bungie leaders have held a majority. Sony nevertheless has leverage over Bungie managers to perform, lest they lose their jobs to.
By the way, this also corroborates the fact that Sony has not bought Bungie, if anyone's wondering about that. Because, hey, if you buy something, you own it, okay? If Sony actually bought Bungie, there's no reason for Sony to have the majority on the board or their own CEO. They literally just send an email to whoever they want at Bungie and tell them what to do. And if that person says no, well, congratulations, you're out of a paycheck because you're fired. You have no right to choose. If Sony owns Bungie, they don't need any of this. They just tell them what they need to do, and it's over because they own them. That's how ownership works.
Sources noted. For all the stresses of the Sony deal on Bungie, one well-connected former worker at the studio told GameFile the alternate history where Sony doesn't buy Bungie is worse. The alternate history is insolvency. This is what we were told before.
Yeah. This is why this deal happened, because Bungie completely burnt everything they had. Again, Bungie is just a story of non-stop disaster, horrible decision-making, and ineptitude. It is crazy they have survived this long. And that's just because they lucked out and Destiny was somehow a great game. For the most part, I guess.
Told that Bungie essentially took the deal with Sony because they were treading water. But here's the thing, man. If you don't address how you got insolvent in the first place, or damn near it, somebody is spending too much dough, too much money. Somebody going way too crazy. Look, I know.
Not necessarily. You spending money is a way for that to happen, but you can also actually do everything properly, but you're just not making enough money.
Everybody is jumping on Pete, and I'm not saying.
And with Lightfall and all of that shabazzle, it's very likely they were not making enough money. Well, it's proven that they were not making enough money. Otherwise, they would never accept a deal from Sony.
You shouldn't, but it's not Pete in his cars. They're spending it somewhere, though. But it wasn't the core. 2.3 million on 3.6 billion. Now, who knows what the payout was, though? That's true. Who knows what the payout is? I mean, dude, the only thing that makes sense is they took the $3.6 billion, they put it in Doge when it was at 72 cents, and then things went south really fast, man. But they bought into it. They bought it at the high. How'd that money disappear? What happened? That's a lot of money. You could have literally put that money. I don't know. You could have bought treasury bills or some shit. I don't know how much they need liquid on them at all times. I'm gonna just say this. I wouldn't be surprised if something comes out in the next year or so.
Wait a minute. Doge is up to... Hey, I have probably doubled my money in Doge. Huh. The only problem, it's on Binance and I don't remember my password. But I did put, like, you know, a K in maybe into Doge or something dumb like that at one point, because I was like, yeah, whatever, these shit coins. Maybe something happens.
And
Not smart,
we find
but, you
out
know.
some crazy stuff, like something crazy happened to that money. I mean, this just sounds like, who was the guy back in 07, Bernie Madoff? It's some Madoff shit. I'm just saying. I mean, that money of that amount, what the hell happened? Who's auditing? Sony's got to have their own, like, someone's got to be auditing. They did build a brand new huge office building in downtown Bellevue.
Sony probably has done an audit, but an audit doesn't have... An audit doesn't actually mean what you think it means, okay? Well, maybe a financial audit actually kind of does the trick here, but, you know, what he means by the word audit is not what an actual audit is.
And those things cost hundreds of millions of facilities. It costs permits. The area is money. Yeah, I know the facility you're talking about. First up, it's leased. Second, that was done before, that lease was locked in before COVID. Talking like 2019 when they locked into that lease. How much money that is? Not enough to deplete $3.6 billion. A top-heavy team. Layoffs have been ripping through the games industry for 2 years, costing over 20,000 workers their jobs since the start of 2023. As tracked by game developer Farhan Noor, pundits, executives, developers, and more have been blamed.
Oh no, these sad 220K woke losers who are absolutely horrible at their jobs. So sad, I'm gonna cry.
Come down from the pandemic-driven boom of 2020. When much of the world's population was locked indoors and needed entertainment. A pattern has emerged of gaming giants that added hundreds or thousands of workers in recent years, now cutting a large chunk of those roles. That's been the case at Sony, as well as Activision, 9,800 workers in 2021 versus 13,000.
Again, the games industry is just so dumb. The fact that they legitimately didn't think this is ever gonna end is crazy.
In 2022. Riot, where co-CEO Mark Merrill said a January layoff of 11% of his workforce followed a period where headcount doubled and more. A variation of those headcount expansion challenges set in at Bungie, which have become top-heavy with managers, according to 3 former members of the studio. On the one hand, it's an interesting byproduct of people loving Bungie, one source said. People stuck around at the company rather than splitting for another studio. On the other, we needed more people to do the actual work. Yeah, I think this part right here is probably the most important. The result has been the de facto demotion of some senior members of the studio down to more hands-on roles in the company's games, a move that has also shaken up teams and left some developers at Bungie feeling squeezed. Yeah, it's weird, man. So there were demotions of senior members at the studio. And I bet there was a lot of people that got moved up to those roles, those lead roles and stuff like that. And what happened is their team probably got cut or eventually let go, or they were put on an incubation project that obviously nothing came out of it. Probably took the demotion to keep their jobs too. Yeah. Now, Destiny isn't enough. For more than 200 Bungie workers, the priority now is how to find work in a rough market. The day of the layoffs, there were at least glimmers of hope as developers from EA, Microsoft's 343 Industries, and others said they had some open roles. For the rest of the workers at Bungie, the challenge would be whether the studio can turn itself around. More than 850 people will remain working on Destiny and Marathon, Parsons said. At the moment, only Destiny 2 is making the studio any money. The game's June expansion to the final state was critically acclaimed and held as a high point in the decade-long Destiny saga, and yet it sold less than Lightfall, one of the former Bungie sources.
Yeah, that's the crazy part. Less than Lightfall. Lightfall, even for non-Destiny players, is easily known as the absolute worst thing to ever happen to Destiny. Jeez.
Sources told GameFile, comparing the 2 expansion launch sales. Even the rosiest sales for the final shape probably couldn't have single-handedly turned things around. The financials just don't work, they said. Destiny is an incredibly expensive game to make. Then how do you...
Well, that's pretty much it. Again, we will see. Maybe the layoffs are enough. I really doubt that the layoffs are enough. Okay, you have how many people did they let go? Like 200? 200, add 3 zeros on top of it. That would be... How much is that actually? I'm an idiot. 2 million times by 4. 4 million times by 12, almost, no, 48 million. Okay, so they're saving probably roughly 60 million in total, because if there's less work to be done in general, they need to invest in less in technologies and outsourcing and, you know, all of that stuff. So this is effectively saving them 60 mil a year, roughly, let's say like that. So is that actually enough to make up for, you know, the budget, the hole in the budget that they need to get to not get owned by Sony? I'm not sure. Well, I have absolutely no sure. I have never seen. I have never I have never seen a financial report on Bungie, so I don't know. But you know, okay, if we assume it's roughly 60 mil a year, I don't think that's probably even enough. Who knows? Anyway, wait. No. It's probably still not enough. There's no way of sugarcoating it, probably. Anyway, this was Kuzer Sensen. That was At the Cross, or just Cross, I guess. Have a nice day. Bye bye.